Welcome in. This is week 9 of DFS, and this is the Adjusted Line Play Report presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at ToddZilla1337. You can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. And today's show is powered by Rain Total Body Fuel. Are you looking to make it rain some cash in DFS? Tune in to the Adjusted Line Play Report from Zilla Fantasy Elite and follow host Todd Hoffman while he delivers the most accurate DFS advice in the industry and make it rain. All right, folks. Today's flavor, Rainbow Sherbet. It's one of their newest ones that have come out, and it is delicious. The mic can pick that up, but man, this stuff is good. Rain. All right. Let's go make it rain some money in DFS this week, guys. All right, we'll do a little bit of an audit. We are in week 9, so 8 weeks. We have cashed or made money in 7 of our 8 weeks in DFS so far using this information. And this is not in cash. This is actually in FanDuel large field tournaments. So we're talking, 200 and some thousand entrants like that every week, except for one, which was week 7, where we lost 9 cents, or I lost 9 cents anyway. We have made money on our tournament lineups for 7 of the 8 weeks, in between 25 to about 400% above our entry fees. So if you don't think this stuff works, I don't know what to tell you. We are highly successful this year in predicting the outcomes or selecting the guys that you will need for fantasy purposes, for DFS. Get those start-sit decisions worked into your dynasty and redraft leagues, and make sure you dominate those. Make sure you dominate your friends. This is where you want to go to see how those games are going to unfold. With that being said, let's get over into the main slate, and we're going to go through the main slate, and then we'll get to the 2 island games on Sunday night and Monday night. To start it off, we basically go from the highest Vegas game total down to the lowest, and then we'll hit the island games at the end. Keep in mind, we have 2 number 1 highest game totals for this particular slate. The first one we're going to go over is Los Angeles Chargers at the Atlanta Falcons, and the other one is Green Bay at Detroit this week. First, Los Angeles going into Atlanta. They are 3-point road favorites. 49.5 Vegas game total, 26.25 of those points coming from the Chargers, 23.25 coming from the Falcons. This game could get a little interesting as we dive into this a little bit deeper. Offensive pass protection for the Chargers, number 1 and number 11 in pass DVOA. Atlanta 32nd and 30th. They're down their cornerbacks, which were their kind of strong suit to begin the season. But now those guys are gone. Chargers should have plenty of time to pass the ball. The only issue is they're down Mike Williams. They're down Keenan Allen. Josh Palmer looks to be their best wide receiver. I don't think he's necessarily that talented that he's going to dominate a game like this, but he should see plenty of targets. It's just a matter of, cost to point ratio. And I think DeAndre Carter is going to be somebody, if they have time to pass. We've seen DeAndre Carter this year be the guy that's getting those deep bombs, and I think he's going to be the biggest beneficiary of this. Same with Austin Eckler. So a lot of times when the wide receiver 1 goes down, it's actually the running backs who see a massive target load, especially if it's just a 2 or 3 game sample size. They don't really change their offense that much. It's just there's not enough talent out on the field to get open. So that leads to a bunch of dump-offs to the running back position. I think this is really good for Eckler. And just looking at the run game, Chargers pretty bad at 29 and 28, but Atlanta 29 and 26 at stopping the run. So he should actually find it a lot easier to run the ball than he's accustomed to this season, which is also good for his outlook in this. But Yeah, the two guys I like from the Chargers, Eckler and DeAndre Carter, and more so DeAndre Carter because I think he's a deep threat and they're going to have some time to pass. I've seen it too where the more time to throw actually benefits Gerald Everett. I'm not sure if he's just not that good at getting open, and the extended time allows him to get open and get passes, but Everett could also see a pretty solid week. And that could be a good way to get unique on this particular slate. I'm not sure how popular this will be, but if you're doing a Herbert stack, maybe doing Herbert, Eckler, and Everett, somebody like that, or Everett and DeAndre Carter, something like that. But the main piece I would like from the Chargers here is Eckler. I think he's going to have a very, very good week this week. And we'll get down to the Atlanta side here. We look at their offensive pass protection, number 29. Number 8 in pass DVOA. Chargers 17 and 13. And then on the run blocking side, Atlanta number 11 and number 10. Chargers 19 and 23. This to me says that Atlanta should be able to run the ball on the Chargers this week, and that's kind of exactly what they're going to want to do. Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley, I think, will be just fine in this particular matchup. I think they'll see success on the ground, and wouldn't be surprised either if you see Mariota kind of flushed out of the pocket, get some rushing attempts too. I think he's pretty much been over 6 rushing attempts in every single game so far this year. To look for him to have some decent rushing floor there. As far as the passing is concerned, it's not really showing up that it's going to be a particular great matchup there. So Kyle Pitts and Drake London probably not going to be super great matchups this week. Just keep that in mind as you're kind of going through and making your lineups. It's going to be probably the Atlanta run game that's going to flourish here, and then the Chargers should have a lot of time to pass the ball, and Eckler should be very, very in play here. So on the Atlanta side, more interested in the run game, probably avoiding the pass game there. We did see an explosion last week, but I don't think that's going to be the case this particular week, and I'm not entirely sure if the Chargers can push the pace anyway in this particular game, just with the personnel that they have out there. It's probably going to be a rather quick game. Not as many plays ran as you'd expect, perhaps, for a number 1 game total slate. So I do kind of like the under-hitting in this, despite Chargers being able to move the ball very effectively. I just don't know how that's really going to come with the pass game options being so limited. And then Atlanta likes to run the ball, play slow. I do like this actually hitting the under. As far as the other number 1 game on the slate, that is Green Bay going into Detroit. And we actually have Green Bay going into Detroit as 3.5-point road favorites. So 2 road favorites here in the number 1 games. Green Bay at 26.5 team implied total. Detroit number 23 team implied total, with Vegas game total overall of 49.5. Again, tied for number 1 with that Chargers and Falcons game. Green Bay, number 8 in offensive pass protection, number 12 in pass DVOA. Detroit, 26 and 32. They should have plenty of time to pass the ball in Green Bay. This should be good for all of the receiving options. And then we look at the run blocking. Green Bay number 2 and number 9. Detroit 26th and 30th. Almost as bad as their pass defense. Green Bay should be able to run the ball as well very effectively in this. Expect Green Bay's offense to be able to move the ball very efficiently and effectively, both in the air and on the ground. The problem is that the points are probably going to get spread out amongst a bunch of people in the pass game, and then depending on if they're the ones scoring and being spread around, I'm not entirely sure how crazy you want to get with like an Aaron Jones in this particular matchup. It could get a little bit dicey there if the pass game's being effective. You got Samori Toure sitting out there scoring a touchdown. You got Tonyan scoring a touchdown, and then maybe Aaron Jones only scores 1. He's kind of expensive. He's not going to get you there in a slate necessarily. I think he's in a good spot. I think he's going to be pretty popular, but just realize I don't know if the ceiling's there. He's going to have to be the one scoring those touchdowns against Detroit in order to have a monster game here. I just get a little uncomfortable in that kind of a setting with how good the pass game is projected to be here. You could certainly do Aaron Rodgers stacks, get him with like a Robert Tonyan and a Lazard, or Lazard and Dobbs, or Dobbs and Tonyan, something like that. Or, Aaron Jones, if you think he's going to catch a pass, you could do like Aaron Jones and Dobbs, something like that. Double stacking Aaron Rodgers, either with Aaron Jones or a couple of the pass catchers, I think is probably the way to go if you're going to attack this Green Bay side. And then on the Detroit side, offensive pass protection number 2 and 16. Green Bay's defense against the pass 14 and 9. So that's kind of in the favor of Detroit to an extent. I would expect them to have a decent amount of time to pass the ball. It's probably just going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got rid of Hawkinson, so expect St. Brown to be well over 10 or 12 targets in this particular matchup, especially if Green Bay's putting up points. I would assume Detroit will actually pass the ball pretty effectively and often. As far as the run game, Detroit number 3 and number 7 in run blocking and run DVOA. Green Bay 31st and 31st. So they are really bad at stopping the run. That's where Detroit thrives. So expect Detroit actually to be able to move the ball very well and effectively on the ground. This is very similar to the previous number 1 game where, hey, the incoming team that's favored, both of their offensive things, like especially the pass game, looks like it'll be very effective. Run game should be very effective. And then you get the home team where their run blocking is actually the strong suit, and they should be able to move the ball pretty effectively running the ball. So I expect Detroit to do that. If you want to get different, especially in the tournament, Jamal Williams, I think, especially if Detroit's playing hurry up mode and scoring a bunch of points. Like I think every opposing team that has come into Detroit has put up at least 27 points this week. I would expect Green Bay to be very similar in that aspect. Green Bay does like to grind the game out, but if they're very efficient against this Detroit defense, which I expect them to be, it could be one of those shootouts again. And Detroit, certainly no stranger to putting up points, especially against a bad defense like this, stopping the run. And, if they're getting near the goal line, that could be the Jamal Williams week again, where hey, he might only be getting you 50 or 60 total yards, but he's scoring twice and he's cheap. So I like him in DFS. Swift, I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but if I'm going to attack this in the tournament, it's probably going to be Jamal Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Might even go that route if you want to do a Goff stack and just hope, one of those touchdowns that Jamal Williams scores is through the air somehow. But it's an interesting game. I like it a little bit better than that Chargers-Atlanta game as far as, run backs on both teams. The Atlanta side has, the running backs, and I don't like those as much. But 2 interesting games there to start us off. Number 3 game on the slate is actually one of the 2 late games. There's only 2 late games because we have Bipocalypse coming up here. And that is Seattle going into Arizona. Arizona 1.5 point home favorites for a 49 point Vegas game total. The previous 2 were 49.5, so very close. Seattle 23.75 team implied total. Arizona 25.25. We saw this one a few weeks ago in Seattle, 19-9 Seattle favor. They won there. That was without DeAndre Hopkins on the Cardinal side. Keep that in mind as we go through this. So Seattle offensive pass protection, number 27 and number 5. Big gap there between their pass protection and their pass DVOA. Arizona, number 27 and 23 against the pass. I would expect Seattle to be able to have a little bit more time than they're used to pass the ball and be explosive here. So I do like that. On the run blocking side, Seattle 26 and 13, Arizona 15 and 11. I don't think Seattle's run game is going to be nearly as efficient. Walker is certainly capable of busting off long runs. I don't expect him to have a very, super efficient week unless he's breaking off one of those long runs. I think the vast majority of his stuff is going to be, held close to the line of scrimmage. And then the pass game should see a little bit extended period of time to throw compared to what they're used to. And I think that's going to be very good for DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett this week. I don't know how many people are going to be playing Geno stacks, but Geno double stacked with those 2. You're going to be eating up a lot of your salary in those wide receiver positions, but it could get interesting, especially if you're bringing it back on the Arizona side with Hopkins. But yeah, I don't know popularity-wise how popular that's going to be or how popular those receivers are going to be. Been kind of hearing people poo-poo this matchup since the first one was like a 19-9. As far as the Arizona side is concerned, number 13 in offensive pass protection, 27 in pass DVOA. Seattle 11 and 14. Pretty much kind of a stalemate there for Arizona. And then on the run game, Seattle 16 and 10 at stopping the run. Arizona 28 and 23. So Arizona's run game probably not going to be very effective. If that's Connor or Benjamin, I don't think it's really going to matter in this particular matchup. As far as moving the ball, I think Arizona's going to have to do it via the air, and that looks like more of a studs eat type of matchup where it's pretty even, 11 and 13 on the pass rush and pass protection. And studs, that's going to be Hopkins. I do like that as far as, hey, you got the Geno stacks running it back with Hopkins, got all your wide receivers kind of taken care of. And then if you're not going to be stacking this particular matchup, but grabbing Hopkins and one of those Seattle wide receivers, I think is a very good skinny stack to have as your secondary run back this particular week, especially if those two number one games are going to be very popular. And a lot of people aren't going to be on this. I think this could pay off very well in DFS this week. As far as pace is concerned, Arizona number 4 in overall pace of play, but kind of their other stuff is, bottom of the pack for the most part. Seattle's middle of the road in pretty much all aspects. I don't think the pace will get out of control here, but just something to monitor as well. As far as the next game on the slate, number 4 is Las Vegas at Jacksonville. And we have Vegas going into Jacksonville as 2-point road favorites. 25 team implied total. Jacksonville 23 team implied total for a Vegas game total of 48. Hey, we're already through 4 games here, and we're still in the 48, the upper 40s. That's pretty rare for this year. It seems like by the time you got to the 3rd or 4th game on the slate, you're already down at like 44, 43 points in a lot of these weeks. So glad to see it here, still at 48. Again, Vegas 2-point road favorites. Offensive pass protection for them, 17 and 22. Jacksonville 30th and 21 in the pass rush. That means Vegas should have a decent amount of time to pass. Not incredibly great, but an above average matchup. And then the run game, number 1 and number 8, which is very good, versus Jacksonville 7 and 20th. Very similar here, where I think Vegas, they're just above average, not great matchups for their entire offense, which leads me to believe that they should be able to move the ball both in the air and on the ground. The run blocking is more of a studs kind of eat thing, which I think is good for Jacobs. As far as the pass game, it'll be a little bit better than what you're expecting for efficiency, but I think this is one of those Devontae Adams get right weeks against this Jacksonville defense. And I think getting into the Jacksonville side, they should be able to move the ball as well. So I could see this one actually developing into a shootout. Both teams, kind of middle of the pack or somewhere in that range as far as pace. So that won't get out of control. But looking at the Vegas, pass game being a little bit more effective, having a little bit more time than they're used to, I think that'll be good for Carr. I think that'll be good for Waller or whoever plays there at tight end. But Devontae Adams, I think, will be the main beneficiary. Jacksonville, not that bad at stopping the run, but Las Vegas has been very good at running the ball, and I think that will continue too. So I think this is a Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams week for Vegas. I said the same thing last week and they got shut out, but this one also looking very similar. As far as Jacksonville's offense is concerned, they're number 6 in offensive pass protection, number 15 in the pass DVOA. Vegas 29 and 31 at stopping the pass. Jacksonville should have plenty of time to pass the ball. That's going to be good for Christian Kirk. That's going to be good for Evan Engram, and that's going to be good for both Zay Jones and Marvin Jones. I think Trevor Lawrence stacks in tournaments and DFS could be very sneaky this week, especially if Vegas is going to be putting up points and this one ends up shooting out. I don't think this is going to be a super popular game. Vegas has been very disappointing the last couple of weeks. And Jacksonville just kind of hasn't really put it together since the first couple of weeks this year. I think they get right on offense in the pass game. As far as the run game is concerned, number 25 and 16 for Jacksonville, Vegas 11 and 18. I don't expect Etienne to have like a monster game on the ground. It's not a terrible matchup, but it's not saying that he should be super efficient with his touches there, and Jacksonville should have plenty of time to pass the ball. So if Vegas is scoring points, I think Jacksonville's going to be moving the ball effectively as well through the air. Etienne certainly capable of catching passes as well, but I like the pass game here. I like the pass game options, double stacking Trevor Lawrence with some of those pieces. Christian Kirk, Evan Engram, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, something like that. Can be very effective this week, especially if a lot of people are going to be more so on Etienne after a few good weeks and realizing like Vegas has sucked for the last couple of weeks. Anyway, that's going to do it for that particular matchup. Very interesting for DFS. I think there's a lot of value to be mined in this particular matchup. So keep that one on your radar when you're setting those lineups. I think that will win you some money. Buffalo at New York Jets is our number 5 game on the slate. 46-point Vegas game total, 28.75 of those coming from the Buffalo side, 17 and a quarter from the Jets. So Buffalo there going into the Jets as 11.5-point road favorites. As far as betting's concerned, almost always it's like a 90% rate in which the home underdog, when it's 10 points or more, so Jets, they're 11.5-point underdogs here at home. Almost 90% of the time that there's a home underdog by 10 points or more, the home team actually covers that spread. They don't necessarily win, but they do play well and they cover that spread. We saw something similar with Philadelphia and who they play, Houston in Thursday Night Football. You know, it was a 14-point line there as of Wednesday when I made that, but we saw Houston come out and play very well against them. I think it's going to be similar here with Buffalo and the Jets, although I do like Buffalo a lot more than the Jets in this and being able to actually cover that spread. But just know like 90% of the time, that's it for your prop bet kind of things. Jets covering that 11.5-point line, not a bad play. Now, as far as DFS is concerned, Buffalo number 5 in offensive pass protection, number 2 in pass DVOA. Jets number 18 and 8 in the pass rush and pass DVOA. Big favor there for the Buffalo pass game. And the run game, it's 19 and 25 for Buffalo versus the Jets 6 and 8. Don't expect Buffalo to be able to run the ball very effectively. They're going to be passing the ball, and they should have a decent amount of time to play here. Not sure what the weather is looking like there in New Jersey, but should be a little bit interesting. I think the pass game is what you're going to want. Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, definitely viable stacks, especially in your cash games. When they have a little bit of extra time, I think Gabe Davis is also a good option in DFS. Certainly capable of putting up a bunch of points like Vegas is expecting in this particular matchup. And really, I don't know who else is going to be putting up points from the running back position. So it's going to be pretty much Dawson Knox. I think it's going to be Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis and Josh Allen doing most of the scoring here. Those are the 3 guys from Buffalo that you're going to want. And you can certainly stack that as well. On the Jets side, we have number 12 and 21 in the pass protection. Buffalo 7th and 4th, so pretty heavily in the favor of Buffalo there, especially in the DVOA aspect. Then stopping the run, Buffalo 4th and 5th, Jets 16th and 17th. Don't expect the Jets to be able to run the ball very well. Off of James Robinson, certainly this week. Don't like his matchup there. As far as the pass game, I think that's how the Jets are going to have to move the ball in this particular matchup. I certainly project them to be down, so I think it's going to be quite a few more pass attempts from Zach Wilson this week. And really, like, if he's going to be under pressure, that's just going to be more targets actually to like Michael Carter and Conklin. And really, those are the only 2 Jets that I'm necessarily interested in playing in DFS, just because they're going to be cheap and probably low roster percentage players this particular matchup. And you never know, hey, if they get 10 targets, something like that, certainly not out of the question for them to put up some points and give you a 3 or 4x on their salary. I know Garrett Wilson probably going to be the most popular Jet played in this particular week. Not super interested in him. I think Buffalo can shut him down. The pass game hasn't been super good, and they're going to be under pressure. I think it's just going to be quicker passes, quicker dump offs to Conklin and Carter. So that's how I would attack that particular matchup. Buffalo plays fast. Jets actually play pretty fast too. So keep that in mind when you're putting the lineups. They do kind of go back and forth pretty good there. Number 6 on the slate is Miami at Chicago. I think this one could be very good for DFS as well. 6 on the slate. Not sure how popular it'll be, but Miami going into Chicago as 4.5-point road favorites. 25 team implied total for Miami, 20.5 for Chicago. For a Vegas game total of 45.5, number 6 on the slate this week. Miami, number 11 in offensive pass protection, 3rd in pass DVOA. Chicago, 22nd and 18. Expect Miami to have plenty of time to pass the ball. That's going to be good for Hill, and that's going to be good for Waddle, just like last week. Gesicki could even be the beneficiary in this particular matchup. If it's going to be windy in Chicago, it's going to be probably more underneath passes, which is going to be better for Waddle than Tyreek Hill. Although we've seen Tyreek Hill also get some of these underneath shorter routes as well. But I do like Waddle if it's going to be windy there in Chicago. I just don't know what the weather is supposed to be like. I'm assuming it's going to be kind of wet and rainy. So keeping it a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, probably going to benefit Waddle a little bit more. In the run blocking side, Miami 20 and 19, Chicago 24 and 28. That's more of an even matchup to slight benefit there in Miami's favor. If it's going to be windy and sloppy and rainy, that could be a good week for Mostert. They just traded for Jeff Wilson. Probably knows this offense pretty well. I just don't foresee Mostert giving up a ton of volume to him the very first week there. And if Miami's going to be up on Chicago, it's going to be a little bit sloppier conditions, windy, rainy. I would like Mostert more than maybe some of these pass catchers in Miami, as they're probably going to be a little bit more popular. Mostert probably a little less popular. So that's how I'd be attacking those Miami games. If the weather looks like it's not going to be an issue, then I do like the pass game a little bit more. As far as Chicago is concerned, we have Miami's pass rush at 23 and 29, which is bad, fortunately for them. Chicago, 32nd and 31st. I expect Chicago to have a little bit more time than they're used to pass the ball this week. That would be good for Darnell Mooney to get open. The dude's very good deep threat. Seems like that's their main pass game weapon that they're going to be using too. But we also have Claypool coming over from Pittsburgh now in his first week. And then I believe last week we also saw N'Keal Harry, the new addition from this year, also have a solid week. So I think Justin Fields, just with this information, should be able to pass the ball a little bit more effectively than he's been used to this season. And we've seen him kind of, a top 8 quarterback pretty much every week for the last, month. I think he should be solid there. If we think he's going to be getting pushed out and scrambling, that's also good for his fantasy output. Fully expect him to have 50, 60 yards rushing in this game as well. So Miami's run stopping, number 5 and number 9, Chicago 14 and 18 at running the ball. Don't expect Chicago to have a real great game on the ground. So this is why I say I think they're going to be moving the ball via the air. If the conditions are a little bit better, again, I don't know what the weather there is in Chicago for this weekend. I'm assuming it's not going to be great, but I think they're going to be moving the ball via the pass attack in this particular matchup anyway. Fully expect Miami to be putting up points on them, so there'll be more pass game scenarios for there, and I think they're trying to finally unleash Justin Fields. So look out for the Chicago pass game this week, and then I feel like Miami could be moving the ball. I think it's just a sneaky DFS kind of play there with some people that are kind of gross for DFS purposes on the Chicago side. But yeah, just keep that in mind. There could be some sneaky upside there with some guys scoring some touchdowns and 2 or 3 to 4xing their salaries this week. Number 6 game on the slate there for Miami and Chicago. Number 7 is Minnesota at Washington. I'm kind of surprised that it's this low. We have Minnesota going into Washington as 3-point road favorites. So a lot of road favorites this week. Minnesota 23.25 team implied total. Washington 20.25 for a 43.5 Vegas game total. Number 7 on the slate. As I said, one of the lower ones. We have Minnesota's offensive pass protection, number 9 and 18, and then run blocking 6 and 4. Washington, again, Minnesota 9-18 in the pass protection. Washington 9-28 in the defensive pass DVOA. As far as the pass protection is concerned, it should be kind of a wash there. DVOA is suggesting, Minnesota a little bit favorite there. I think this is good for Justin Jefferson this particular week. Washington certainly gives up explosive plays to the wide receiver position, and that's kind of how Justin Jefferson succeeds as well. Very, chunk yardage, very explosive player. Expect that to continue this week. I think, Justin Jefferson, 130 yards and a touchdown, 30 to 150 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns is not out of the question this week. As far as the run blocking, Washington's very good, 9-2 at stopping the run. Minnesota 6-4 at the run, which is usually, hey, this is a close matchup. Studs eat. Dalvin Cook is a stud for sure. Minnesota just doesn't run the ball all that often, so I don't like Cook necessarily in this unless Minnesota's scoring a bunch of points. Cook's expensive, and he would have to score at least 2 touchdowns to make that work on his salary with the volume that he's kind of getting in a lot of these games. Certainly could see him, 15 rush attempts for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, get there. I just don't think that's a very likely outcome in this particular matchup. I like the pass game a little bit better there. I just think Cook is good, not great this week. As far as Washington's concerned, they're pretty bad across the board on offense. Pass protection, 26th and 28th. Minnesota 6th and 26th at getting after the quarterback. So, in the favor there of Minnesota's defense. And then run blocking, Washington 30th and 30th. Minnesota 8 and 16 at stopping the run. This is very similar to what Washington's been the last couple of weeks where, hey, they're not going to be running the ball very effectively. The people that they're going against are pretty effective at stopping it. So I don't expect the run game to be very popular. That's pretty much an out for Brian Robinson this week. As far as the passing is concerned, they should be under pressure. Heineke's a little bit more mobile. Normally, I'd say that's a little bit quicker passes are going to be needed. McLaurin and Gibson seem to be the biggest beneficiaries of these scenarios. And really, in the Washington offense, it's going to go through, from Heineke, it's going to go through McLaurin, it's going to go through Gibson, and it's going to go through Curtis Samuel. And I think those are really the only 3 players in play in this particular matchup for Washington. Just like last week, it kind of said, hey, this is good for the running backs who are catching the passes. McKissick, Gibson seems to be the one being the biggest beneficiary of running those routes. And I like him, and really I like Curtis Samuel the most. I don't think McLaurin necessarily is that great of a matchup. He just seems to have a better connection with Heineke than anyone else, and Heineke likes him. So that aspect looks strong. It just, the matchup itself doesn't look like it's going to lend itself to a super productive game for McLaurin. More of the underneath stuff with Curtis Samuel, Antonio Gibson. And we'll go to number 8, which we have 2 teams tied for number 8. One in the morning, which is Carolina at Cincinnati, and then the other one is the second afternoon game, which surprisingly at 42.5 points is the Rams at Tampa Bay. Going into the season, I'm sure that was well over 50. Carolina going into Cincinnati. Cincinnati 7-point home favorites, 24.75 team implied total for Cincinnati, 17.75 for Carolina, 42.5 Vegas game total as we see. Offensive pass protection for Carolina, number 22 and 32. Cincinnati, number 24 and 7 at passing pass rush, getting after the quarterback. I think there's a little bit in favor of Cincinnati. I think Carolina won't have as much time as I would like to pass the ball, but it's not a terrible matchup for Carolina as far as the pass protection is concerned. The DVOA is a big difference, though. Then we look at the run blocking. Carolina number 8 and 12, Cincinnati 20th and 15 at stopping the run. I think this is a little bit more in favor of Carolina's run game. Chuba Hubbard has been ruled out, which means Deonta Foreman is going to have another week pretty much all to himself. Should see plenty of volume, especially if Carolina is going to be under pressure, which this maybe suggests. They could be. I think we could see Deonta Foreman with a few more targets in this particular matchup. And really on the Carolina side, it's going to be DJ Moore. It's going to be Deonta Foreman, who you're going to want. I don't think PJ Walker's in play this particular week, even though I think Cincinnati should be able to put up some points. I'm just not entirely sure Carolina's going to be able to match that particular output. As far as Cincinnati's offense is concerned, they're number 28 and 14 in the pass protection side. Carolina 31st and 27th in the pass DVOA. I think Cincinnati's going to have a lot more time to pass the ball than they're accustomed to in this particular matchup. Carolina's pretty bad there, and I think that's going to be very beneficial for T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. They should have plenty of time to run their routes and get open, receive those passes. I like them stacked with Burrow this week as a kind of an onslaught there with Burrow and Boyd and Higgins, and then running it back, with Deonta Foreman or DJ Moore on the Carolina side. I think that will be effective in DFS this week. As far as the run blocking side for Cincinnati, 17 and 22, Carolina 12 and 7 at stopping the run. I don't think that's a very good particular matchup for Mixon this week. He does get a lot of volume, so he'll probably get there on volume, but he's expensive, and I don't think his ceiling is that high in this particular matchup. Again, it's similar to Cook, where he can produce quite a few touchdowns, but he's going to have to do that if he wants to pay off in DFS this particular week. I like the Cincinnati pass game, and the run back, in Carolina is pretty narrow with Deonta Foreman and DJ Moore, and that's probably how I would attack the game. Number 8 tied is Tampa Bay and the Rams. As I had said earlier, Rams actually going into Tampa Bay as 3-point underdogs. Tampa Bay 22.75 team implied total as the 3-point home favorites. Rams 19.75 team implied total. Again, Vegas game total 42.5, tied for 8th on the slate. The Rams 23rd and 20th in offensive pass protection. The Rams 2nd and 6th in getting after the quarterback. Fully expect the Rams to be under pressure in this particular matchup. Cooper Kupp, keep an eye on that injury. If he's going to be hobbled, this is going to be a bad game for the Rams in general. Would be a little bit better, obviously, for someone like Allen Robinson to get a few more targets. Higgins has been blocking a lot. Higbee has been blocking a lot for the Rams just because their pass protection has been so bad. We saw him getting quite a bit of volume at the early part of the week, but he's now kind of switched to not running any routes and staying in and blocking, so keep that in mind. Setting your lineups this week for both DFS and season-long leagues. And run blocking for the Rams, 32nd and 26, also very bad. Tampa Bay 14 and 19, not great, but significantly better than the Rams' run game. Rams don't really have any running backs that are worth talking about. It seems like Cam Akers may come back, get a few snaps this week, which is just going to muddy the waters there between the 3 running backs that they have. Pretty much a complete avoid on the Rams' run game. Pass game is going to be pretty poor if they're going to be under pressure, and Kupp seems like he's healthy. Kupp's really the only player that I'm interested in, especially if they're going to have Higbee in blocking. Higbee would have been the other option that I would like. If Kupp's out, Allen Robinson probably the biggest beneficiary as far as getting targets are concerned, as well as those receiving backs in Los Angeles, which I don't know if that's going to be Henderson or if that's going to be Ronnie Rivers. It's kind of tough to say. As I said, it's an avoid, especially if Kupp's out. Just the Rams are probably going to get obliterated there on offense by this defense, and Tampa Bay would certainly be in play as far as the defense is concerned this week. As far as the offense is concerned for Tampa Bay, number 3 and number 9 in the offensive pass protection. Rams 16 and 19. A huge favor for the Tampa Bay pass attack. Is this finally the week that they're going to put it all together? I hope so. I've been waiting for all season. Pretty much all the last 5 or 6 weeks, Tampa Bay has had very, very plus matchups in the pass game, and we've just seen them kind of flounder there on offense, not doing much, but it's going to be the same thing this week. Tom Brady should have a good game. We should see Godwin, Evans, Julio Jones, Gage, Cade Otton, all be able to, have time to get open. Who's going to get the targets? Probably Godwin. For the most part, Evans and Julio would be next up on that list. They should do well. It's just they're supposed to do well the last 5 weeks as well, and they haven't. As far as the run game's concerned, Tampa Bay 27 and 31st, the Rams 17th and 4th. Don't expect Leonard Fournette to have a very effective game on the ground or Rashad White on the ground. I do think Tampa Bay is going to have to move the ball via the air, which is kind of their strong suit anyway. Just kind of temper your expectations for Fournette in your season-long leagues, and keep that in mind. I think it's pretty much the Tampa Bay pass game and maybe Cooper Kupp if the Rams have him active for this week. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty ugly affair, I think, on offense for the Rams, especially if Kupp is out. All right, and then we'll get to the last game on the slate, Indianapolis at New England, and I think this is going to be an ugly one. Been hearing a lot of stuff on Twitter about attacking the running backs in this matchup, and I don't think that's a good idea. And we'll get into why. They are the worst game on the slate this week. Number 10 at 40.5 Vegas game total. Indianapolis 17.5 team implied points. New England 23 team implied points as 5.5 point home favorites. Indy getting into the offensive pass protection, number 24 and number 30. New England, number 10 and number 5. 2 reds versus 2 greens. Indianapolis probably going to be under tremendous pressure when they're passing the ball. As far as run blocking is concerned, Indianapolis number 31 and 32. New England 23 and 27. The good thing for Indianapolis is they should find running the ball a little bit more easier than they're used to in this matchup against New England. We have Jonathan Taylor ruled out. Deion Jackson certainly capable. I just don't know how much this offense is really going to be moving the ball, especially if their pass protection's so poor. The good thing for Deion Jackson is if they're going to be under a bunch of pressure and they're trying to get the ball out quick, he's going to be the beneficiary of a lot of targets in this, and the run game looks like it's going to be the more effective of the two this particular week. So they might lean on him pretty heavily as far as volume's concerned, just to kind of keep this game close. We'll kind of see how that plays out, but he's really the only person of interest in this particular matchup. Paris Campbell may be getting the underneath targets, but really I think it's going to be Deion Jackson and those tight ends this week that are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of being under pressure and having this run game be the more effective of the two options. But Deion Jackson really the only play that you can have from Indianapolis, but it's not great for this particular week. As far as the New England offensive side, 25 and 25 in the pass protection. Indy number 15 and 20. That's kind of in the favor of Indianapolis. New England probably going to be a little bit sluggish passing the ball. Not very effective. The line won't be able to hold up as well. We look at the run blocking side. New England 10 and 20. Indianapolis number 3 and number 6. Again, in the favor of Indy's defense. I think Indy defense this week could be kind of sneaky. As far as points are concerned, I don't know about turnovers or sacks or any of that if New England's not going to be passing the ball that much. But I think New England's going to be sluggish in this game. I don't think their offense is going to move the ball that well. I don't think Indianapolis is going to move the ball all that well. And I think this game just gets dragged into the mud just in general. And then the 40.5 points, I think you should bet the under on that. I don't think Indianapolis is going to sniff the end zone hardly at all in this matchup. I think New England's going to struggle to move the ball in this matchup, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this one turn out to be 17-3 or 10-3, something like that, in the favor of New England this week. So that one's a complete avoid for me outside of Deion Jackson. Don't like anyone else in this particular matchup. As far as the main slate is concerned, we are done. We're going to get into the island games and give you a little advice for that. Sunday Night Football, Tennessee going into Kansas City as 12.5 point road underdogs. So Kansas City favored by 12.5 at home for 29.25 team implied total. Tennessee 16.75 team implied total. Vegas 46 overall. Tennessee's offense number 30 and number 19 in pass protection. Kansas City number 8 and number 26 in the pass rush. Expect Tennessee to kind of be under pressure when they pass the ball. Kansas City should be able to get after them. There's going to be more dump-offs to the quicker routes, whoever that may be in Tennessee's offense. Don't like them in general. The run blocking is where it's at, though. Tennessee number 5 versus KC number 28, and then the DVOA 15 and 17. I think Derrick Henry will be the entire offense this week for Tennessee as they kind of try to slow down Kansas City's offense by running the ball and just kind of demoralizing them with Derrick Henry. So I think Derrick Henry is really the only player from Tennessee that I'm interested in an island game. If you can kind of envision them getting up and just pounding the rock like that, Henry certainly in the captain's chair, not that terrible of a play. On the Kansas City side, offensive pass protection number 4 and number 1, Tennessee 20th and 15th against the pass. I fully expect Kansas City to be able to pass the ball all over Tennessee with plenty of time. That's good for Kelsey and the pass catchers, not so good for the running backs. So I think Kelsey, MVS, they do have Kadarius Toney there. I don't know how much he's going to play. Juju, kind of redundant with Toney to an extent. Mecole Hardman, guys like that. They get the ball spread around kind of outside of Kelsey. So I think Mahomes with Kelsey and one of those bottom of the barrel pass catchers may be viable as well with Henry and the run back. The Kansas City run game doesn't look so good. Tennessee number 2 and number 1 at stopping the run. Number 15 and number 14 for Kansas City in run blocking. Run game should be pretty sluggish there from Kansas City. Kind of an avoid in the island game. So Kansas City pass attack, bring it back with Derrick Henry, about the only thing I'm interested in. If you want to get a short route Tennessee pass catcher, certainly look that direction, but not something I'm going to be super interested in from the Tennessee side. As far as the Monday night game is concerned, we have Baltimore going into New Orleans as 2.5-point road favorites. Baltimore 25 team implied total, New Orleans 22.5 team implied total for a 47.5 overall game total from Vegas. Baltimore number 19 and 4 in the offensive pass DVOA. New Orleans 19 and 11. Pretty much dead even. Studs eat. Mark Andrews certainly a stud. I don't know how his shoulder is going to hold up, but with the Bateman injury, I think pretty much the only guys that you can be interested in the pass game for Baltimore are Duvernay, Isaiah Likely, and Mark Andrews. Keep that in mind. I think Likely is going to be viable no matter what. With Bateman gone, they're going to be running a lot of 2 tight end sets. As far as the run blocking is concerned for Baltimore, number 21 and number 3, the Saints 18 and 12 at stopping the run. Again, kind of a studs eat scenario. Baltimore kind of out of studs in the run game. I'm not entirely sure with the injuries that have been taking place there, who's even going to be playing or getting the most volume there. Justice Hill, Kenyon Drake, I think will be the 2 highest volume ones. Hill certainly more explosive, but if Baltimore gets down there, they're not afraid to pass the ball, as we've seen to Kenyon Drake near the goal line, so keep that in mind. On the New Orleans offensive side, number 10 in offensive pass protection, number 23 in pass DVOA versus Baltimore 12 and 12. Pretty even there. New Orleans just put Mike Thomas on IR for the rest of the season. So it's going to be the Chris Olave show as far as the pass game is concerned, maybe Juwan Johnson. The run game is where it's at, though, this week for the Saints. Number 4, number 6 versus Baltimore 21 and 25. Fully expect the Saints to run the ball and run the ball effectively this week. Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill will be the biggest beneficiaries. Putting Tyreek Hill in, I don't know what he's going to be for price on the island games there, but if he's in your captain's chair, certainly a sneaky play. He has mega touchdown upside and can pretty much narc a touchdown from anyone. Andy Dalton, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, he can steal touchdowns from all of them, passing, running, catching. So keep that in mind. As far as getting a little bit different on an island slate, especially if he's more expensive. A lot of people probably won't be putting him in the lineup. But yeah, that's kind of how I attack that. I think Lamar will be solid in this, and the pass game is going to be a little bit more effective for Baltimore. And then New Orleans run game, Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara, I think will be solid as well. And that's going to do it for this week, folks. This is week 9. As I had said earlier, 8 weeks in, we have 7 winning large field tournament week so far where we've made money in the large field tournaments on FanDuel. Keep that in mind. This is very effective at, parsing out which plays are going to be good, which, New Orleans pass or run game here versus, their pass game. You kind of weed out, some of the players on each team. You can build the game scenarios that pop up pretty easily. And if you are interested in using this information, certainly give a subscribe on the YouTube channel here and give me a follow over on Twitter at Todzilla1337. Give Zilla Fantasy Elite a follow on Twitter as well at Zilla Fantasy. And that will do it for our Week 9 show. Bipocalypse. I think this will really come in handy for these weeks where we're kind of short and need to really parse out some of these lower end guys that will have solid weeks. So let's do that, folks. Let's go out there. Let's win some money together on this slate and see if we can go 8 for 9 in our large field tournaments this week. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a very successful Week 9. Bye.